r/AskReddit. Redditors who are married to someone with an identical twin. What are your feelings towards that twin? Not married, but an ex-relationship. Let's call the twins Chad and Charles. I had maybe one class with Charles, and we never spoke. Then, I started to have classes with Chad, and we were inseparable. He wasn't only my boyfriend, but also my best friend. Anyways, he broke up with me out of nowhere. Every time I saw him after that, he would act like a supreme asshole towards me. I never knew what I did to deserve that, but it hurt a lot. When high school ended, Chad went to an out-of-state college, and Charles ended up going to the same college as me. Fast forward to the first day of sophomore year of college. Charles and I had the same class together. It's a huge lecture hall. He could sit wherever he wants, but he chooses to sit next to me. I didn't even notice until he said hi to me. I just responded hey back. Then, he proceeded to apologize for being mean to me in high school. I was super confused, but I figured he felt bad that he stopped talking to me after Chad and I broke up. I said, oh, don't worry about that. It was so long ago. If anything, it's your brother who should apologize. My brother, he asked. Yeah, Chad was such a dick after we broke up. Seriously, fuck that guy. Now, I knew that I was saying this to his brother, but the two of them weren't that close. I doubted that he would ever tell Chad that I said that. Even if he did, I wouldn't have cared. Charles just responded with, oh right, Chad. Then, class began. We started taking notes. Charles was writing with his left hand. I thought it was odd and told him, wait, I never knew you were left-handed too. I thought it was just Chad. He just gave me a little nod, and we went back to taking notes. Because I can be kind of slow sometimes, things didn't click in my brain until after class. I rushed to Facebook and looked at Chad's profile. He had just transferred to the same college as me. I was talking to him the entire time. Edit. I'm making this edit after almost 2 weeks. I was going to do it before, but I didn't think anyone else would read it. Anyways, there were a few comments telling me to reach out to him and ask him what went wrong, so I went to Facebook and looked him up. Turns out I'm blocked. Then, I remembered that he blocked me right after he broke up with me. Not only on Facebook, but on all social media. On our college's student portal, there's a tab where you can look at the list of all the students in your class. That's how I ended up finding out that it was Chad I was talking to the entire time. So yeah, I basically have no way to communicate with him unless I see him in person. If I do see him and start talking, hopefully it won't be Charles, and I end up making a fool out of myself again, haha. Married to an identical twin, and with 2 children. I somehow find my wife's twin way to carry herself very attractive, a little bit more than my wife's, but the twin and I have very incompatible personalities and way of thinking, as opposed to my wife, which couldn't be a better match. When I met them, on a kind of local youth group, I didn't know they were 2 people. They used to go together, but they had been elected as their condominium managers, and had things to do in the same time as the youth group would meet. So they would alternate to go. Well, we hanged out for almost 6 months and they never said anything about being a twin. She, in my mind, had some weird inconsistencies in her beliefs, knowledge and way of thinking, but I accepted, because that's kind of okay, I guessed. I fell in love, and was about to ask her them out, when they finally both showed up. I was extremely confused. They admitted to have been deliberately omitting being twins. I got flustered, felt betrayed, and started doubting my feelings and memories with that person that now I knew did not exist. I stopped going to the group, because my only reason to go there had been her. Almost a year later, I got back to the group, somewhere inside hoping they would be there. I don't know what I expected, but I still hope something could come out of it. They weren't there. Later they told me they felt so guilty they stopped going to the group for shame in meeting me. Weeks later, now with no hope and ever seeing one of them again, I randomly bump with, now my wife, in the university's campus. We get to talk, and I ask her out, and we started dating. The first time later I saw her twin I felt weird though. I remembered and noticed some of the very attractive things she would do was actually the twin. I also found out all of the inconsistencies and incompatibilities, and the things I didn't like that much was also part of the twins' personality. We moved in together for a bit, the three of us, and the twin, and I got to be friends. It was fun, the three of us, but like many people know, twins are very dependent of each other, and everything changed after my son was born. My wife's attention was 90% to our baby and me, but my sister-in-law couldn't understand and started having increasingly intense episodes of jealousy. She turned completely against me, saying bad things about me to her family. My mother-in-law took her pain, and not only she dislikes me, she constantly tried to manipulate my wife against me and our relationship, saying things like our son was also my sister-in-law's son, that if she dumped me our son would have two mothers, and etc. My wife and I talked a lot, as we always did, and thanks to that I could know what was happening behind the scenes in her family and all this movement against me, so I could defend myself against all the unfounded accusations. We moved out of there and now live half a continent away. To this day I still thank the universe I bumped with the right twin in that campus. TL. Doctor. Started in love with both of them thinking they were the same person. Dated one and got friends with the other. Got kids and the twin got jealous. Now her family doesn't like me, but it's okay, because we are half a continent apart. My wife was the more outgoing twin in high school, where we met. Her sister, she was the quiet one. You gotta watch out for the quiet ones. My wife and I fell deeply in love, and barring a single 2-week period in freshman year of college, have been together since high school. We have 2 gorgeous kids, and while our living situation isn't what I'd call long term, I consider our relationship and family as steady as a rock. My CL is wired to want the comfort of that stability. She wants it more than anything in this world. She wants it so much that she has consistently shot herself in the foot trying to get it. Things like going on a single date with someone from a dating app, then chewing them out a day later because she sees them on the app. I thought our date went great, why are you still on here? She also continually bitches and moans about how she can't find a good guy. Her standard mode of search is to go to the shadiest country bars and or house parties, get blackout drunk, and let the chips fall as they may. She is consistently unhappy with her work situation, to the point where she's earning a comfortable base salary, lives where she works in a company home, or hers, with paid utilities, and is still griping about her job. Her current position is the least stressful possible set of responsibilities still within her field. Finally, she will not communicate. Twice now we've had her essentially assume she's good to stay over at our place without even asking. Once, we weren't home, and she had her current boyfriend with her. When we call her on her shit, me, more specifically, become the bad guys. All of this said, I love her. She is more my sister than a sister-in-law. And it breaks my heart that, for all her intelligence, she won't step back and take a critical look at her own life. If she did, she would realize that 90% of her problems either aren't problems or could be fixed by her. Dated a twin. He was definitely the alpha, extremely outgoing, way more confident than his twin. His twin and him looked extremely similar, but his twin was much quieter and didn't seem nearly as confident. His twin seemed a bit jealous of my time with his brother. The worst part about dating, we'll call him B, was that he and his brother had to be together all of the freaking time. They even worked the same shifts at the same place and had the same classes at the same college. It's very difficult to date and be intimate with someone that can't go more than 30 minutes without seeing his brother. For our first few dates it was normal enough. I guess he was trying to hide his closeness with his bro. But then it became obvious they were basically a package, and it got weird. His brother always seemed in a bad mood when I was around and didn't really ever talk to me, so I wasn't really attracted to him at the time. B and I break up after like 6 months. Fast forward like 6 years later. Male friend of mine has gotten several roommates, like 4 or something, and they all rent a house together. They basically have a party at their house every night. It was always a lot of fun. One of my friend's roommates is my ex's twin brother. He seems to be more extroverted and happier than he used to. He actually talks to me now, and we start getting along pretty good. I could pretty much tell here was definitely mutual attraction, and I started to think about him a bit. I basically stopped going over there because for whatever reason, it was just too weird for me to think about developing a relationship with my ex's twin brother. Then I would have to see my ex again all of the time for starters, and I was still attracted to him as well. Not a twin, but a doppelganger story. My dad's first marriage was a wreck, and when he finally decided to leave it, his wife refused to accept it and made my dad's life a living hell. He decided to go to a group for people who recently got divorced, and after one meeting realized it wasn't going to help him, but he made a friend with another guy going through a divorce. The only difference being that he, like my dad's wife, didn't want the divorce. They quickly became best friends, and while my dad didn't continue going to the group, his friend did. Then one day my dad had trouble getting a hold of his friend, and slowly but surely the guy started ghosting my dad, a term which didn't exist yet, but was most definitely in practice. My dad was hurt, but mostly confused why this guy who was his best friend suddenly cut off all contact. Not only that, but when my dad tried to confront him about it, he acted even weirder, and wouldn't give a straight answer as to why. My dad jokingly said, "What, are you dating my wife or something?" There was silence on the other end of the phone. Apparently my dad's ex-wife began going to that very same group right after my dad quit, and they hit it off and started dating. What's weirder is why that guy fell in love with her. Fast forward 2 months later, and my father is in a meeting room about to have an interview, and the woman behind the secretary desk looks like his ex-wife. Like so much so that my dad is unsure of if it is, in fact, his ex. Besides the fact that she keeps looking at him as well. He kept looking at her, and finally got up to ask her, when she asked him first, "Are you Mike DeVito?" He was so confused. Turns out my dad's ex and that other guy's wife were almost identical, and she only knew who my dad was because her ex-husband had introduced her to his new girlfriend, and it weirded her out enough she looked into it more and had seen a picture of my dad while researching his ex. They both marveled at how absolutely bizarre the whole thing was, and also how unhealthy and weird it was that he had gone out and found someone who looked just like her after she broke up with him. The irony of the whole thing is that my dad's ex desperately wanted kids and ended up remarrying creeper guy so she could do that, even though she knew they both didn't really love each other, and it turned out that guy was sterile, and she blames my dad for her not having kids to this day. Weird, right? Like, what are the odds of all of that? My mom-in-law was an identical twin. When my hubby and I were dating, I saw old photos of the two of them together as both children and grown women. So I knew it was there. They also had a set of identical twin cousins, who were often in photos from the 1920s with them. Mom-in-law would look at childhood pics of them, and if it was just one of them, she would say, "That's either me or Zona." They couldn't tell who was in a photo. Their dad never could tell them apart, so he just called both of them sister. They always switched off with their boyfriends. One would be on the porch swing with her boyfriend talking when she would get hungry. So, she would say to him that she was going to go get a drink of water and go into the house. After going in, she found that supper was ready, or they had put out food to eat. She would get the twin to go back to the porch swing with her boyfriend while she stayed inside to eat. The boyfriend thinks that he is back talking to his girlfriend, not her identical twin. My boyfriend and I went to visit his mom one Saturday afternoon. He saw her older sister sitting with his mom on the front porch swing. He hollered to both of them as, "Hey, mom. Hey, Aunt Inez," as he opened my door of the car. He told me, "Aunt Inez and Aunt Zona are here, so you're going to get to meet them today." Now, I knew that these two sisters, who had married brothers, had moved in with each other after their husbands had died. Aunt Inez was the oldest of all the kids, and Aunt Zona was the identical twin of my future Mill, Zelma. We are walking up to the house, chatting, when he suddenly stopped and said, "Well, you're not my mama." Both women on the swing started laughing, saying, "No, I'm not." Well, I had looked up at the two women, just flabbergasted. Aunt Inez was obviously not his mother. She was one of those little dried willow of a woman, made tough and hardened by a hard life of lots of hard physical labor in the sun. But the other woman with the smiling, familiar face looked exactly like his mother. We had laughed about my thought at the time that I confessed to him that night as he took me home. "Well, you fool. Of course that's your mama." I couldn't believe that he would say something so stew. Then the front door opened and out came his obvious mother. I was mortified, to say the least, and my face must have shown my dismay, embarrassment, shock, as the sisters all were laughing. As I looked from one twin to the other, I knew that I was going to have to be very careful and observant. Standing there that spring afternoon, I couldn't see any difference between the two of them. But over the years of being in the family, before they passed away, I could see differences in their faces that made it easier for me to tell who was who, without embarrassment. Of interest to us was the fact that my Mil had Alzheimer's disease, but her twin didn't. Aunt Zona did have mitral valve prolapse, which was treated with surgery replacing the leaking valve with a porcine valve. She died peacefully in a porch swing at her home shortly after the surgery. My mom-in-law had breast cancer, leading to a radical mastectomy shortly before our wedding. About a year after our marriage, she began to show significant Alzheimer's symptoms. She died several years later from the cancer as it went rampant within her chest and torso organs. Personality-wise, they were very similar. I had a precious mom-in-law who loved everyone. Never spoke bad of any family members, no matter how she was treated. She loved me a lot and was glad her oldest son had found me. I'm engaged to an identical twin. They have identical interests, but are polar opposites in personalities. My fiancé values his family. His twin hasn't talked to many of them in years. My fiancé makes a point to be honest. His twin frequently lies, although it's gotten better perhaps, because he doesn't talk to most of the family anymore. My fiancé values improving himself and those around him. His twin is more of an enabler. They play games online all the time, and I get to hear my fiancé complain about his behavior at least once a week. But, like I said, my fiancé highly values his relationships with his family and will always forgive him and move on. I value his twin as I do his other family members. They do spend more time together via online games compared to the rest of his family, which I'm grateful for, because this is something my fiancé really enjoys doing, but I can't do with him for multiple reasons. On the other hand, I sometimes get exasperated hearing my fiancé's complaints so often. For me, he is nothing more than my future Bill. They look a lot alike, but I don't find him attractive. Probably his facial expression. He always looks like he knows more than everyone else in the room. Edited to add his twin is dating one of my best friends from high school. She dislikes confrontation, which means she and my fiancé don't get along very well. I'm not talking anything involving raised voices, just you may be more effective if you do this, or I disagree with you type things. I'm sure she thinks she has the good twin who lets her be the way she is without challenging her. Look, as an identical twin, nearly engaged to a fraternal twin, we are all just people, and sometimes you might get confused, but we don't. It's all totally different people. I have so many identical and fraternal twins in my family as well. They are just different people, and it's the same as being able to tell Bob from Sarah. My girlfriend would never approach my twin as if he were me and vice versa. I love my girlfriend as if we'd been in a long-term relationship, which is true, and I love her sister as if she's one of my best friends, but totally out of reach in certain ways. Shut up, you perverts. For those of you looking for the weirdness about it, her sister is very attractive, but in similar, yet different ways than my girl. I wouldn't pick one over the other because they are the same. But where it differs the most is like, hey, I like this girl, and it's still kinda fresh. For example, I live with and argue with one of them when things are bad, but could confide in the other while that's going on, hoping that it might help me out in a roundabout way, but it's still kinda this side chick that is what you were looking for, without the drama. On the other hand, I don't have all this experience with the other twin, so who knows if we would argue about the same shit. It's a little weird. I'm just trying to be honest. If you have any decency, then it's no different than your best friend's girl/wife/whatever. It's really all about the kind of social boundaries that you would draw. If you would cheat with your girlfriend's best friend, then you would probably cheat with your girlfriend's twin. Yeah, pervert. On the bright side, I met my girlfriend and was immediately accepted and kinda forced into her entire group of friends. I met her sister and 3 other girlfriends all at once, and it transitioned me from a person who just moved into a new city by myself to someone that can text any of them over stupid bullshit any day. The twin either accepts you immediately or fights against you, and if the latter is the case, it's probably not a good situation. You have heavy reinforcement in the case of twins, where solo/non-twin children are left to figure it out on their own, or with feedback of a less representative perspective. Initially I didn't like my husband's identical twin brother. We were young, 17, and he was just immature, cheap and lazy. He piggybacked off people and was noticeably selfish. When my oldest was born, he wasn't bothered. He didn't try and establish a relationship with her. He was always busy doing his own thing. I was happy when he matured, as it made it easier to be in his company. He was in a serious relationship, and she was good for him. We all got on. We socialized and went to the cinema, concerts and out to the pub, etc. He met a different local girl and they became serious. My husband telepathically knew his twin, had asked her to marry him. I was there. It happened. Out of nowhere he said he's engaged, and his phone rang within a minute or so. My husband answered him by saying, "You're after getting engaged, aren't you?" Now he is married to a really nice woman, and we 4 get on. Nowadays my brother-in-law is very reserved and predictable. He has his own kids. He has a good paying, highly responsible job in a management position. He is very concerned about his image in the community and with his wife's family, who he sees most days as they live in the same area. He has even taken up his in-laws' interests, specifically religion, something he wasn't interested in before, and one of the few things the twins do not have in common at all. He is still selfish. He barely ever sees or calls his own parents, but goes out of his way to be involved in his mother-in-law's life. Of course he is keeping his wife happy, but he doesn't consider his own mother and father. This puts his parents' needs all on my husband. His twin takes advantage of that situation, so that pisses me off. As it's obvious what dynamic he's creating and where his personal priorities lay. Others also comment about it, so it's not only me who sees this. My husband notices it too, but generally ignores it, much to my disdain. Neighbors, acquaintances and others get them mixed up frequently. They have the same sense of style, so dress similarly, have the same body shape and size, but also the same hair too. I always say, when identical twins are young, it's cute, but when they mature it gets confusing. People see one with another wife and family and that can lead to suspicion. Also, complete strangers have full-blown conversations with my husband thinking he is his twin. If they are together it can cause heads to turn. Nothing really negative, mostly funny situations arise. Because their voices are also very similar, when making phone calls even to family, they have to identify which one is calling. One other thing, I myself am an adoptee. I grew up not having any similarities, common traits, shared DNA or blood relations in my family, while the complete opposite was true for my husband and his identical twin. We are polar opposites in this regard. I wasn't jealous, but it has meant that over the years my husband has tried to understand my separation issues, but how could he, truly? Conversely, he has had a carbon copy of himself since conception, a built-in best friend and an inseparable connection to his twin. So how could I possibly truly understand that dynamic? I'm not married to a twin. However, my best friend is. I've known him for 20 years. And he's been dating her for 16 years. They actually just got married last month. Anyway, the twins could not have been any different in lifestyle, yet completely the same in attitude, sense of humor, and the way they acted. Both were sweethearts, if you stayed on their sweet side, but very sarcastic and fun. I still hang out with them, or at least one, every few months. But the one married to my buddy drank, had sex, didn't go to church, or believe in God, and many other major lifestyle differences despite growing up together and being very close all their lives. The other twin turned, I think it was Jehovah's Witness. Was really hoping spell check would help me out on that one. But not gonna bother googling. Sorry door-to-door Bible homies. But either way it was one that didn't have sex until marriage. Some weird other stuff. She dated a dude for 10 years or so. Never had sex with him. Broke up with him. Stayed his religion afterwards. Then met some other guy, married him about a year ago. I'm assuming they banged. She never drank either. No drugs. And this all happened while they were born, obviously, grew up, and stayed in the same city their whole lives. Still till this day. Not like they had distance between them. It was almost like they were two different people. But again, they acted the exact same when together. It is so weird when I think about it. But so natural. It never got in the way of them being best friends that I ever saw. But I was never privy to the behind the scenes action. So who knows? This doesn't include me, but I'm including it because it fits your theme, Galactic Avatar. Close bracket. In a book I have mixed feelings about but still read, a man likes a woman he never tried to date when he was her boss. He thought she was poorer than him, but he didn't think he discriminated against social class. He never wanted that to stain him for life. She is a woman who wants people to love her for who she is, not the fact that she's one of the richest women in the whole world and knows and is friends with the richest people. She got a job with a fake name to try to prove to herself and others she can survive without her mega billions and family's name and power. She wanted to last 1 year, but she only lasted 8 months. She went back to her life, her riches, her rich friends, and left her poor and poorer friends and their lives behind. She didn't know he followed her to her town the next chance he got. He didn't know who all the rich people were he kept seeing at the rich hotel and restaurants he went to. Thought they were people who bought knockoffs when he saw their stylish accessories. She told him she had a sister. She didn't mention they were twins. She already has a job of her own and that's how she could afford the fancy shoes, purses and jewelry she showed up in as his temp. He saw who he thought was her at the lounge at the hotel when he went to eat. He got mad at her deception since she was schmoozing with various rich men and knew them. He confronted her privately and was in for the shock of his life. Her twin sister was the one he saw, and she's a hotel lounge singer and travels to different countries for vacations often. They lived together, but when she found out he was in town and didn't yet know the real her, a friend of hers who runs a hair salon let her stay at her house while the friend was on vacation. The friend understood why she was hesitant to tell who she was to the guy. She had explaining to do though since her friend's a nudist and had a portrait of herself in her room. The twin sister eventually meets the man her sister's at odds with. She tests him in the identical tests and he passes. They look alike, but walk and act differently. When the twin reveals who they really are, he doesn't react to the truth about her real identity. He's instead furious that she didn't tell him and lied to him, even though his sister later reminded him he treated her shabbily when he thought she was poorer than him and made excuses why he could only date rich, popular girls when he thought